Every November we teach a familiar story. Pilgrims landed at Plymouth Colony. Native Americans welcomed them. They held a feast, and everyone was thankful. But what if that story is only part of the truth? Today we're diving into the myths around Thanksgiving, why they matter, and what we should really be teaching kids. Let's start with the version most of us learned in school. The myth goes something like this. A group of pilgrims arrive in 1620. They're welcomed by friendly Native Americans. They share a peaceful, celebratory feast. And from that moment, a new nation of liberty and opportunity begins. Sounds nice, right? But according to historian David Silverman and the Wampanoag people, the tribe involved, the story is deeply flawed. Here are some of the biggest inaccuracies in the feast myth. First, that Native American history begins with Europeans. In fact, the Wampanoag and other indigenous peoples had lived on the land for at least 12,000 years. Second, the idea that the Pilgrims' arrival was first contact is simply not true. The Wampanoag had known Europeans for at least a century by then, including being trafficked via slave raids. Third, the notion that a cheerful feast marked a peaceful handoff of the land overlooks the complexity of alliances, epidemics, colonialism, land disputes, and warfare. And yes, there was a feast of sorts, but the bigger story is far less neat and cheerful. The Wampanoag people remember things differently. Their leader, Auzumaquin, also called Massasoit, didn't strike an alliance simply because he was friendly. He was coping with a devastating epidemic. Intertribal rivalries, especially with the Narragansett, and a shifting political landscape. And the handoff myth ignores a major conflict, King Philip's War, which was one of the deadliest colonial native wars in New England, and radically changed the power dynamics in favor of European settlers. So rather than celebrating a pristine Thanksgiving moment, many native people view the holiday season as a time of mourning, the beginning of a long series of losses, land, life, sovereignty. Why did the myth become so pervasive? There are several contributing factors. In the 18th and 19th centuries, New Englanders wanted to assert their cultural identity amid waves of immigration and changing national demographics. The Pilgrim Indian feast story provided a comforting, nonviolent founding narrative. In 1863, during the Civil War, Abraham Lincoln proclaimed Thanksgiving as a national holiday to foster unity. The Pilgrim and Indian origins story fit nicely into a message of common purpose. Over time, the image of friendly Indians, a simple feast, and harmonious beginnings became embedded in school plays, popular culture, and national memory, even though the deeper history was far messier. So if the classic story is misleading, what should we teach kids and ourselves? Acknowledge that the land now called the United States had been inhabited for thousands of years. Native peoples had complex societies, histories, and relationships long before Europeans arrived. Recognize that the encounter between the Wampanoag and the English was political and strategic, not simply a friendly dinner invitation. Talk about the consequences: disease, land displacement, colonization, cultural change, and conflict, all part of the story of early colonial America. Include the ongoing presence of indigenous peoples. The Wampanoag are still here, living, adapting, resisting, not just characters from a first Thanksgiving story. Encourage critical thinking. Why do we tell certain stories? Who benefits? Who's missing? If we teach a myth that erases suffering or exploitation, what does that say about our society and our values? In many homes this Thanksgiving season, we'll gather, give thanks, and reflect on gratitude. But we can also pause to ask, what are the stories we've inherited? Which ones do we pass on? And what might we leave out? By telling a fuller, more honest story of Thanksgiving, we honor not just tradition but truth. We build respect for the indigenous peoples of this land. We invite more honest conversations about history and identity. Call to action. If you're a teacher, parent, or simply someone who grew up with the Pilgrims and Indians narrative, take a moment to dig a little deeper. Share this video or the article link in the description with someone you know. At your Thanksgiving table, consider asking, what stories are we celebrating? What stories are we leaving out? Thanks for watching. If you found this helpful, please like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you'll know when our next deep dive drops. Happy and thoughtful Thanksgiving to you and yours.